Morning glory and hallelujah. It's day 5 of the Jesse tree, and we have a big tree here in the sanctuary. In fact, we have a 14-footer. Let me see if I can show you all how tall that is. It's pretty tall. Today we're looking at the story of Isaac and Abraham. And we talked a little bit last time about Abraham and how he started over in a place called Ur. And there were some issues with idolatry according to some extra biblical evidence. And he destroyed a lot of idols and he got out of town. And he did what God said he would do. In fact, he left with his nephew and his wife. And he left with his father, but his father wasn't able to complete the full journey all the way over to the land of Israel. So they found themselves there, and day 4 we talked about how Abraham, he was a wealthy man, and he had lots of people traveling with him, but they weren't of his relation. He had no children. Eventually, it was his wife's idea that maybe he would have a surrogate help out, and her handmaid Hagar helped out, and he had a son named Ishmael. But this was not the child that God had said that he would give. He promised a child to Sarah, okay, the Hebrew word for princess. And so eventually, there he came, Isaac from Sarah. When Sarah was 90 years of age, Abraham's 100 years old, a miracle by any stretch of the imagination. And they have their legacy. And what a temptation it would be when you've waited so long to have a child to finally just do everything you can to just love on that guy. Mwah! So glad you're here, Joshua. You want to say hi?
Hi.
Just be really easy to idolize all of your kids. Yes?
Yes.
But remember, the story begins with idolatry being a problem. And God, he doesn't want anything coming between you and him. And that's what an idol is, something that comes between you and God. So, this story has been called the test. It's Abraham's test. Now, how old was Isaac? Some say he was very young, but at one point, he's told to, Abraham takes a bunch of sticks and he puts them on his son. So his son has to be old enough to be able to carry the thicket. Now I imagine it probably didn't have all this greenery on it because it was meant for a sacrifice. So at some point though, they're on their way, just the boy and Abraham, up the mountain. They've left the servants, a couple back. If you look at some of the different Targumim, the Aramaic translations of this, Ishmael actually is present as one of the servants, if you will. But at some point, Isaac, the boy whose name is Laughter, heads up the hill with Dad on the mountain. And we believe that this is the same mountain, Mount Moriah, where the Temple Mount currently is. So, but of course, this is before Jerusalem is Jerusalem. So, anyways, they go up there, and at some point, the boy says,
Father,
"Yes, my son."
we have the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt sacrifice?
Well, it's a very good question, son. I know that God will provide the lamb himself, my son. Go ahead, narrator. The beautiful Melinda, my wife.
And the two of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told them about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar, on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham!"
Yes.
He replied, "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything Abraham, "Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram caught by his horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son.
Arwen, come here.
So Abraham called that place, "The Lord Will Provide." And to this day, it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided."
Good girl. Now, it's an awkward story to say the least. But the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time and said, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord." Now, you swear on someone greater than yourself, and the Lord can't swear on anyone greater than himself. So he says, by himself, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this to Abraham, and not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me." See, the story is about a man who God chose, and he said that he would bless. And those that cursed him, God himself would curse. And then when the opportunity to idolize his child came, Abraham identified with God and said, "I love you more than my own son." And he knew that this was the promised child, the one that would have such a birthright from him, and that would continue. And so in Abraham's mind, as much as he's listening to God and he doesn't understand, he believes that his one and only son, the only son that God was to give him, even though Ishmael was there, that was not the promised son. That's why this language is your one and only son. He believed that God would resurrect him. And thank God that he didn't have to do that. But this man who's known as a friend of God identifies so strongly with God, because this is exactly what our Father in heaven has done. You know, he gave his one and only son as a sacrifice for all of us, so that we could come back together with him in the family of God. And of course, that's Jesus. And so Isaac is not Jesus. Isaac, whose name means laughter, he's a type of Jesus, a preview, if you will, of what's to come from the Old Testament. As God reaches down to his man Abraham and says, "Oy vey, I understand." Now, this is really something to say about Isaac as well, because as much as he was the promised child, he had to be old enough to carry the thicket. And having all that said, he didn't fight his over 100-year-old father. And I imagine he'd be a teenager, or my son here is days from being 11. He didn't fight him. He trusted both God and his father, even to the point of being bound and placed on a thicket to be sacrificed and set on fire. And I thank God that there is no human sacrifice in the Bible that God is for, except for this human sacrifice of Jesus himself. This is not something that God does, but he did allow Abraham to show Abraham himself, because God knew what he was going to do, to show himself that he loved God more than every relationship that he had, more than everything. He's a very wealthy man. More than everything, Abraham loved God, and God blessed him so much for that. All right, it's back to the Jesse tree, and today our ornament is a ram's head. This one Melinda made, and it's symbolic that the Lord will provide, even though you can't always see it. Go ahead and put it on the tree, Joshua. And there it is. Just as the Lord provided a ram in the thicket, he provided the sacrifice to save Isaac's life and to bless Abraham once again. May God bless you, and I hope that you're having fun getting ready for the Christmas season, and I hope you don't let anything get between you and God, that you focus on him and love those that he loves, those that are in his family, and those that he desires to return to his family. May God bless you. Everybody, say Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
We'll see you later.